Biden's 2025 budget includes some serious capital gains hikes. There are 3 proposals in the 2025 budget. We'll put all the links in the show notes to increase cap gains rates as opposed to income cap gains. If all 3 are passed, big if, it would more than double the long-term capital gains tax to almost 45%. Important to note, this only covers those making $1 million or more a year, which is like, less than 1% of the country, way less. And so this is definitely a tax the rich idea here. Currently, the highest long-term capital gains rate is 20%, which is really about 24% if you earn more than $200K per year, because you have to pay an extra small tax. If these proposals become law, big if, it would create the highest cap gains rate in 100 years. Here's the chart. This comes from Americans for Tax Reform, which was done by a Reagan era, an NGO, I think, that was formed by a former Reagan administration. They basically make politicians sign that they won't increase taxes. The budget also proposes a 25% unrealized cap gain tax. This would be a tax on total income, including unrealized cap gains for all taxpayers worth over 100 million. Okay, Sachs, I know this is your red meat. There's a lot of pieces here, but gosh, this is crushing for those folks who want to vote for Biden but are moderates, because this is like the number one thing you can do to stop innovation and investment in the country, which we desperately need. This is a head scratcher.
Biden is playing a game of chicken with the tech industry and with, I'd say, suburban voters in general. I mean, is this what you want? At some point, you're going to have to say that this is not okay. I mean, first of all, you've got this 25% unrealized gains tax, which is a wealth tax. If you're somebody who's created a small business or a family farm, or you're a tech founder, if you get to qualify for the amount, then you've got to pay 25%. And in order to raise the money for that 25%, you're going to get taxed on, let's say you try to sell 25% of the company, you're now going to get taxed 45% of that, plus 13.3% California. So really, you're going to have to sell more like 40% of the company just to pay off this unrealized gains tax. And by the way, you haven't made a dime yet. You haven't put $1 in your bank account.
And that's
just
year
pure
one.
Confiscation.
That's year one. What happens the following year?
This
The
is
actual
insane. Insane.
This is ridiculous. These things will never pass.
Yeah, but let me tell you. I mean, so this is in Biden's budget for next year, and this idea. This is not the first time we've seen this. It was in his original Build Back Better proposal, and the only reason that failed is because Manchin and Sinema voted against it. So Manchin and Sinema are not going to be in the Senate next year. Okay, they're not running for re-election. So if the Democrats have the trifecta, if Biden wins re-election and holds on to the Senate and House, but without Manchin and Sinema, I think you have to price in the strong possibility that this passes. I don't think you can just shrug it off.
Freeberg, your thoughts? Well, we're talking about it here. We're not shrugging it off. This is like 5 alarm fire here on X. Everybody's talking about it. Freeberg, your thoughts?
There was a poll published yesterday. Bloomberg News Morning Consult surveyed 4,900 registered voters in 7 swing states. And the poll showed that 77% of registered voters in those states support basically an asset tax on ultra high net worth people worth over $100 million to keep Social Security intact. So I think that's a strong indication of where things are headed generally. We can debate the tactics and the nuance of this election cycle, but as we all have talked about and know, Social Security becomes de facto bankrupt by 2033, perhaps earlier. So we have a few years to figure out whether we cut Social Security benefits in this country or find alternative ways to fund it. And it's pretty evident from this poll that Americans are not in support of raising the minimum age from 67 to 69, which is one of the questions in here. Only 25% of Americans support raising the minimum age for Social Security from 67 to 69. Meanwhile, 77% strongly support a tax on ultra high net worth to fund the gap, the funding need.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, because you're basically positioning this tax, which is really complicated in the details, and the person getting asked the question doesn't understand it, compared to the most popular program that the federal government has, which is Social Security. So obviously it's going to poll that way. I mean, look, you can ask a question in a way on a poll to get whatever answer you want to get to. I can basically prove to you that a majority of the American public is either for Ukraine funding or against Ukraine funding, depending on how you ask the question. And look, yeah, obviously, taxing people with $100 million of paper wealth is going to be more popular than sacrificing your Social Security, obviously. But that doesn't mean that this is a good proposal economically at all.
No, it doesn't. And I don't think that that's what really matters. I think most folks are voting for themselves, their particular needs, and the majority of people need more support. And
this is not even going to save Social Security. I mean, you know, what is this tax going to get us? It's going to destroy the startup ecosystem. It's not going to balance the budget. We're still spending way too much for that. It doesn't pay down the debt. It doesn't save Social Security. It's just more and more taxes.
I think that's the inevitable trend. I'm just saying, I don't know how it's going to manifest, but I think it's inevitable that we're going to raise federal revenue through some form of taxation that's going to feel deeply uncomfortable and inappropriate, and it's going to have negative economic consequences. And this is where the economic spiraling Millet has talked about.
But Balaji actually had a brilliant blog post about this called "All It Takes Is All You Got," and what he pointed out is he was talking about the federal government's runaway deficits and debt and borrowing, and somebody responded to him with this chart that shows assets versus liabilities. This guy, Brent, who I guess is a foil on X for Balaji sometimes, said, oops, you only showed one side of the balance sheet. Common mistake, though. Basically saying that Balaji didn't know what he was talking about because Balaji was only showing the red, which is the government liabilities, the government debt. And he showed that, well, no, you have to include all the green bars. But what are the green bars? Those are private assets. And Balaji pointed out that, no, actually, you're proving my point because people like you just see all of the private assets of citizens of the United States as belonging to the government.
Yeah.
And if you actually extend the red bars to the present value of all the long-term liabilities that this government has, it's more like 175 billion. So, you know, people like this see the 160 trillion of private wealth as being on the balance sheet of the federal government and being used to offset the 175 trillion of liabilities. In other words, all it takes is all you got. That's the trajectory we're on. Mm-hmm. Is we have a
your home, your 401k is the government's, and we're going to.
They're going to go after your. They're going to absolutely go after your retirement accounts because that's the only way they're going to pay off these liabilities.
It's gross. Yeah,
unless
another idea: cut spending. Cut spending.
Well, there's another great tweet by a guy who said, "Laptop mercenary." I don't know this account, but he said something funny. He said, "Imagine being a California high earner. Options: either vote for your own financial liquidation or vote for the orange man."
Yeah, it's brutal.
Checkmate, dude. Checkmate. You guys just got to put on the red MAGA hat. It's happening.
Here's the. I mean, I read that. I read that you're all in. You don't
have to wear the look. You don't have to wear the red MAGA hat when you go into that polling booth. Nobody knows the button you're pushing.
Yeah. Okay. There it is. I mean, these are the two worst candidates in the history.
Jason, Biden has had 4 years to prove that he's a moderate. He's had 4 years to prove that he represents the normalcy that he promised to us when he first got elected. That's been 100%. Refuted. I mean, how much more does it take for you to understand that his policy is radical?
Yeah, I mean,
he combines the foreign policy of Dick Cheney with the economic policy of Elizabeth Warren. How much more does it take? Are you going to vote for your own financial liquidation? Because that's what we're talking about.
It's the worst two candidates, and I think I'm voting for the third.
Ooh, an RFK endorsement. Wow, I didn't see that.
I think I just have to put in the protest vote of RFK or a write-in.
I love RFK. I think he's a great vote.
Yeah.
For Democrats.
I mean, crazy. I think maybe I go after The Rock. But yeah, congratulations on Biden on making this easy for Trump with his Build Back Broke plan. So dumb.